We are Heather and Paul Christie.
And for over 12 years, we've worked with executives and entrepreneurs to accelerate change in every aspect of their business.
Because we are in the fastest paced business environment that anyone has ever seen before.
So join us for the Evolve to Win show.
Welcome back to another Evolve to Win show. I'm so excited today that we have our guest, Bruce Rosenblatt, with us today. Thanks for being with us, Bruce.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here.
Well, when I first met Bruce on the tennis courts, by the way,
yes,
and I learned that he was a senior housing expert, I think I said to you, well, what the heck does that mean? Because I didn't even recognize that your industry existed. But let me just tell you why I thought it was so valuable to have Bruce on this show and what we're going to learn from him today. So Bruce has, for over 30 years, successfully overseen 75 different senior housing communities. And he's the person and or the industry that you reach out to before a crisis happens. If you are looking for a place, what is that next place for either aging parents or somebody, a loved one that you have who needs to go to a new facility, right? New housing options.
Correct.
So I cannot wait to just jump in and learn a little bit more about what you do and what this industry is and when it came together and all of that. So Bruce, let's start off with, how did you get into this industry?
So I've been in this business for over 30 years, and I moved from New York to DC. And at that time, I was hired by Blockbuster Video.
Oh, good.
And I was also hired by a local, like a mom and pop senior community.
Okay.
And my mom sold real estate. My dad was a psychologist. And so I thought, I really could use both those skill sets. And so I went the senior housing route. And so I worked for this smaller senior community in Northern Virginia, and a bigger company called, and they actually did a mystery shop. Okay. And so they mystery shopped me, and I called them out on it. And I said, "You're mystery shopping me. I know you are." and so
very astute.
Yes, and so that impressed them, and it just happened that they were hiring, and so they hired me. And it was a community that had multiple communities, and then they bought a community here in Naples. And so they promoted me and brought me down to oversee this community in Naples.
Okay, that was how many years ago?
That was about 28 years ago.
Oh, okay, so you've been in Naples for 28 years.
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so this senior housing industry, I've had many of my friends who have aging parents, and they have been in that tough spot of trying to figure out what is the right place, and having, for each one of them, it's the first time going through it. So they don't even know exactly what questions to ask. So what do you advise somebody when they're starting to look for, moving their parents out of their home? Maybe it's been a long-term home and putting them into a facility.
So, and we, in this industry, we call them communities. Okay. So we don't use facility because no one wants to live in a facility.
Okay, so that is our first
lesson.
First lesson. Don't call it a facility.
No.
See, I've already screwed it up, so I'm glad that I'm talking to you now.
That's good. And, this is a big decision. And it's very complex. There's emotions involved. There's finances that are involved. And so it's just very, very important to have very honest conversations with your parents, to understand what their concerns are. And, many times people say, I don't want to move to a facility because, that's the old folks home, and that's where I put grandma, and grandma, that's where, that's for the old and the frail. And now today, this industry has changed dramatically. These communities are resorts. They have golf courses. They have yoga classes, tennis, different dining venues. So it's just completely not what you think. And so, we do a lot of educating because people don't know that these resort types of communities exist, and they're pleasantly surprised. And so, I try to tell people not to wait too long, not because people, it's a hard decision. So people say, I'll wait, I'll put it off, and I'm going to wait for something to occur. And so we tell people, don't wait for something to happen. Don't wait for that crisis to happen, because if you're in a crisis mode, you're not going to make a very good decision. So, you want to, it takes due diligence, it takes research, you're visiting different options, narrowing things down. It takes time. And I have a saying, it's actually on the back of my car, and it says, it's better to be 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late. And
I love that.
And it happens so often where, people wait too long. They wait for a crisis to happen, and it's too late.
So I love that. It's better to be 5 years too early than 5 minutes too late. And yet, I think that most of us would wonder what too early is. So let me give you an example. I have, both of my parents are in their young 70s. They're both very, very sharp, active. Like I wouldn't even start thinking about a community, not a facility, but a community just yet. But at the same time, I think, well, do you want to, though, begin having those conversations while they're still completely and totally together and with it? Or did they take offense in some way because you're broaching a subject that seems to them like years out, maybe decades out? Do you know what I mean?
I understand.
So when is the right time?
I understand it. And I understand it very personally, because I have a 91-year-old mom who lives by herself in her house and doesn't want to move anywhere. Okay. So even though this is what I do in a living, and even though I say 5 years too early, I have a mom who refuses to move anywhere.
Okay.
But I've had these conversations, and you think about like your parents, and they could easily move down here in their 70s and move to a senior community and move once. Mm-hmm. And move into independent living and make their friends and enjoy their life, and know that no matter whatever happens down the road, then they're taken care of.
Then they're right there.
They're right there.
So let's talk about that for a moment, because these communities have, as you said, they've become amazing resort type communities where people are moving to them while they're still in their younger years, right?
Yes.
60s, 70s. I mean, what's the age that you think is a realistic age to move to a community like this?
I would say mid-70s.
Mid-70s. Okay, good.
So let me back up. So there are different types of communities. Mm-hmm. And so there are some that are designed for independent living. Okay. And that those do attract people who are in their mid-70s.
Okay.
There are places where people are, maybe they've waited so long, and so then there are assisted living places, and the average age there is probably going to be in their mid-80s. Okay. So it kind of depends on the type of community. But these
communities nowadays, there are some that have, in one community, you can go from independent to assisted to
skilled nursing, memory care.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is that typical to have communities with all of those options?
So in this area, we are very fortunate because there are some very nice communities that offer those different levels of care.
Okay.
So independent living, assisted living, memory care, and so the ideal situation is somebody moves in there while they're healthy, while they can enjoy their life before something happens. Mm-hmm. What people don't know, and this is why I go back to it's better to be 5 years too early rather than 5 minutes too late, is that these communities have a medical criteria that you're going to have to pass in order to get in. Mm. So you might want to move in there, but they may not want you.
Got it.
And so they're gonna do a medical assessment, and they're gonna evaluate your risk factor just as any kind of insurance product would, and sometimes people don't pass.
And so going back to my scenario, I've got parents who are still in their young 70s, maybe not quite yet the right time. They'd be on the early end for sure if they went into an independent living type of scenario. But how much more expensive is getting into these independent living communities versus just finding a home or a condo in a gated community down here?
So they're called continuing care retirement communities.
Okay.
CCRCs. And they start about $350,000 and they go up to about $2 million.
Okay.
And then in addition to paying that upfront fee, you're also going to pay a monthly charge of roughly $6,000 to $7,000 a month. And so the nice thing about a CCRC is that you're buying a contract for care and services. Mm-hmm. So if somebody moves there and never needs care, then their fee stays the same. So they're not paying anything extra for their care.
So if I understand this correctly, you actually purchase a home.
No, you're
so
actually
this cost of $350,000 to $2 million is paying for the care.
So you're buying a basically an insurance product. A CCRC is an insurance product, and that provides care and services over your lifetime.
Bruce, you said the price of $350,000 to $2 million to get into one of these CCRCs, and is that actually then an asset that they're purchasing that is saleable?
No.
Okay.
No. So you're not buying real estate, and a lot of people think, hey, if I'm paying $350,000 to $2 million, I own something, but you really don't. What you're really doing is you're buying a contract for care and services over your lifetime. So,
which is an insurance policy.
It is insurance, and these communities are regulated by the Department of Insurance of the state of Florida. So they're highly regulated. It's a very complicated topic, mm-hmm. and it's complicated. But you do not own real estate. You're buying a contract for care and services over your lifetime.
Okay, and so when someone is helping their parents to plan for this community and where they're going to be living, it's really important to understand, and I get that it's really complex.
Yes.
Which is in part why you are thriving in business, because you provide a service that most of us really don't know anything about.
Correct, and this is a huge investment financially. You want to try to move once and not move again. Mm-hmm. And you want to make sure that if you're putting down that kind of money, that the place is financially secure and that has a good track record. And you want to know the ins and outs. And so that's what we do. And that's pretty much the reason why we do what we do.
And I know that you're not a licensed insurance broker, and you can't speak legally to long-term care and all the different aspects of long-term care insurance, but I'm really interested how long-term care insurance fits in with this CCRC. Okay. So I know that my mother has long-term care insurance. I'm not sure if my father does, and I question whether my husband and I should be getting that ultimately. But how does it fit? Is it a good idea?
So again, I'm not an insurance guy,
yep.
But I would say if you have parents who have long-term care policies, get it out, dust it off, find out what it covers.
Okay.
And that's the first step, is what does it cover? And so there's a lot of different policies out there. Sometimes they were written years ago, and they may say it covers residential care. It may not be called assisted living. So you really want to know what it covers and how much is your coverage. Typically, there's going to be a deductible period, 90 days, 180 days, which is tied into Medicare. And then after that, then your policy kicks in once you start requiring care. So, just because you have a policy, you can look at it just like if you have auto insurance. You just can't go tomorrow and say, hey, State Farm, I want to file a claim. Something needs to trigger that to occur. Mm-hmm. So same thing with long-term care insurance. Something needs to trigger for your insurance to start working. Usually, someone goes in the hospital, something happens, and then they're in a rehab facility, and then they need some type of assistance, either home care or assisted living or skilled nursing or memory care. So something has triggered, and what we call ADLs, or activities of daily living. And most policies, you would need to show that you require 2 or more activities of daily living. But again, you got to look at your policy, you got to understand that. And so if you require these ADLs, which is assistance with bathing, dressing, dining, transferring, and these are documented, so a nurse would have to verify that you need these ADLs, then you could apply for your long-term care benefits.
Okay.
So if you were living in a CCRC and you needed some help, So even though your care might be included, you can still file a claim with your long-term care policy. And so sometimes people who are living in a CCRC, let's say it's a couple, and they want to stay together and they want to have some home care come to them, even in a CCRC, they can use their long-term care policy to pay for that home care. Or if they needed assisted living, or if they needed skilled nursing or memory care, then they could tap into that policy.
Okay, good. So these policies may have the ability for home care. They may or may not have deductibles. Most of them do, from what I understand. So I guess the point is similar to what you said earlier, which is know now. Don't wait until that policy needs to be exercised. Start to figure out now what it includes, and how it's going to be used as part of the overall planning for your loved one.
And so, there's a lot of different financial ways to pay for these different communities, and one being veterans benefits. And so we work a lot with veterans, and there's a program out there called Aid in Attendance, and the VA, they don't really talk about it much, but it's a program to assist people who were veterans who served our country that need some financial assistance. But so again, you got to get these papers together now. You don't want to wait for your father to be in need of care and you're hunting around for his discharge papers and his all those records. Get these together today. Put them in a nice little file and say, okay, I got these records.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. And we'll take one more break, and you can wipe your face and get a quick drink, and then I'm going to go down the questioning of how do we get them to move. Okay,
we're good.
So we got just under 10 minutes.
You guys are doing great. It's awesome.
So the other thing we need to talk about is that there's other types of communities. So there's not just CCRCs, there's rentals, and there's other types out there.
Perfect. So let's start there, and then we're going to go to how do we actually get them ready for the move. Bruce, how do we you talked about some different types of communities. So one of them is CCRC, but are there other options for rentals, or could you purchase real estate within some of these communities? Tell us about some of the different options.
So again, in this area in Southwest Florida, there are 37 senior living communities in Collier County, and there are 58 in Lee County. And there is a wide variety from the CCRCs that we mentioned to rental communities to assisted living, to memory care. So there is quite the spectrum, and there's quite the spectrum of quality, quite the spectrum of pricing. And so it does take some research. And so somebody may not want the CCRC. Maybe they can't afford the CCRC. Maybe they don't want to be held that tightly to paying that kind of money and being obligated for the rest of their life. Maybe they want the rental, thinking, hey, I can live in a rental community, and if something happens, I can move back up to Michigan and I can just give them 30-day notice, I'm out. Okay. So there's a lot of very good options out there, and it just takes kind of understanding what your goals are.
So I don't have the current statistics, but I certainly have heard the statistics about a huge percentage of our American population, seniors who have not properly invested for retirement. Are there any options for those who don't have a huge nest egg when it comes to assisted living or other communities?
So that's a good question. And we talk about having a financial plan, but we don't talk about having a senior housing plan. And, that needs to be part of the equation because, and I would say if I polled everybody, and said, what would be your preference? Everybody would say, I want to stay in my home.
Yes.
I don't want to move anywhere. I'm going to stay at my home. But you have to think, is that really the right answer? And long term, is that the right answer? I talked about my mom. My mom lives by herself. Every repair that happens around her house is a major deal, and it freaks her out.
And she owns her home?
She owns her home, and she calls me, and I have to be there, and her cable, and it's the lawn, and it's the pool. And so, is that the right answer? And then when you start hiring care, well, someone has to manage that. So it's the adult child, maybe it's the spouse. So someone has to manage all that, plus someone has to pay for it. And so there was sort of a realization that happened after Irma, because people had their caregivers, and then Irma came, and these caregivers hightailed it out of here, and a lot of people were left by themselves. And whereas if they were living in a senior community, they had support systems, they had food, they had electricity, they had activities, and they were taken care of. So, even though people think that that's the right answer, in the long run, it's not.
And so when you think about planning, let's say that someone is already at retirement age, but they haven't really had this conversation about senior housing. Like, what is the housing plan? How do you begin that conversation, and how do you even begin to budget for it?
So, well, it takes, and that's really what we do. We sit down with people, we talk about what's out there, we talk about the cost, we talk about, timing wise, and the implications of either staying where you are. And there's not many people that I meet that have their bags packed and say, okay, Bruce, I'm ready to move.
Right.
So it's usually a 3 to 5 year plan that I'm meeting with people. Okay. And they're trying to develop this plan. They want to know what's out there, and they want to be prepared, and maybe they get their name on a waiting list. So maybe they get their, they start downsizing so they can get better prepared.
So you just said 2 totally loaded things that, gosh, we could go into podcast number 2 and podcast number 3, but are there wait lists for the best of the best communities out there?
There are.
And how soon do we need to get on those wait lists? Like, how long are some of them?
So there are some that have, 200 plus names on them, but there are, depending upon the community, the waiting list, they may not obligate you. So they can call you and say, Heather, your perfect 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment has just come available. Are you interested? And you say, no, we're not ready yet. So there are some communities that you keep your name on the list.
Okay.
And there are some communities that do like a 3-strike rule, that if you turn them down 3 times, you're dropped to the bottom.
Got it.
So each community is different.
And can you get waitlisted in multiple communities
Sure.
to hedge your bets?
Yes.
And is there a cost to be waitlisted in these different communities?
Good question. So each community is different. And so normally there is a cost associated with the waiting list. Most times it's refundable. And
yeah, can you be on multiple lists?
And the answer is yes, you can be on multiple lists, because, and people do that. People, they pick their top 3 communities and they get on a list at all 3 of them. And that way they've, covered themselves.
What's the longest you've seen a list take to get put into the community that you want? Are we talking a year?
Years.
Oh my goodness.
But
Paul, I'm going to start
the problem
getting my name on the list.
The problem comes is that the waiting list doesn't guarantee you acceptance. And so people wait, and they wait, and they wait, and they wait, and usually it's a medical crisis that occurs, and they say, okay, I'm on the waiting list at ABC community, let me in. And that community says, no. So that's the problem. So the waiting list sort of gives you sort of this false sense of security. Does it give you some time to, plan? Yes. But it doesn't guarantee you.
Okay. So I get that. And I'm so glad to know that there are lists, because now that also helps to accelerate the conversation and make it more comfortable, is to say, let's start thinking now. Let's look now while you are completely young and vibrant and healthy and everything is going well. And then we have an idea of what those favorite communities are. We can get on those wait lists. Now, there was one other thing you said, and I know we need to wrap this up. But again, I have so many questions for you. Downsizing. You said the word downsize. And I just think about how, just even having my mom move down here, right? She's got her house for sale up north, and she's about to move down as soon as that house sells. And there's quite a process. I mean, she's in a really big house up there, and she's looking to downsize.
Yes.
That's filled with emotion as well. How do you help people get through that? Or is that something you do? Do you call in other experts for that?
So it is, it's probably one of the major stumbling blocks because people are moving from large homes. There's a lot of memories. There's, you've had your Thanksgiving dinners and it's where you grew up and you got to move from there to a smaller place. And there's just no way that, a 4,000 square foot home is going to fit into a 1,500 square foot apartment. It's
especially when you're coming from up north to down south, and we have no basements down here,
and
so
dark furniture and bulky furniture. And so I do work with experts that's all they do is help people downsize. And so I have people that I can refer, that I feel comfortable that can help people through that process. I have a great story because I had a client this morning, and he was in Missouri. He has a 7,000 square foot home, and he does have some memory issues. And so we were looking at a memory care place, and he has a train set, a very major railroad train set, miniature train set, and we were able to find a 2-bedroom place that he was able to bring his train set. And he is just so excited.
Oh my God,
and
what a great
just
story.
making the move so much easier, and so it's good.
Yeah, so those are the kinds of things that, we may not be thinking about initially as we're talking about the whole, strategic conversation around what's next. And the reality is there's so much emotion that is tied up during that time. And so bringing in different experts at different times. The other thing, Bruce, I wanted to talk real quickly about how you get compensated, because I was amazed after you told me all that you do. And then I learned that there are many scenarios where your senior clients who you advise don't actually have to pay for your services. How is that possible?
So let me back up about the emotions.
Yeah.
Because it is emotional. And I think that's one of the beauties of using our services, because I'm an independent party. And I can come in there and I can say things that maybe it's harder for an adult child to say to somebody. And so, having an expert, having a resource that comes in there, and I can have those tough conversations that, maybe it's hard for an adult child to have with a parent. I can say something to a client that I have a hard time even talking to my mom about. So I get that. And so that's there's an advantage of having this consultant in your corner.
Absolutely.
So our services, on the most part, are free to our clients. So which is great. I can, we help people every step of the way. We go on tours with them. We schedule everything with them. We help them negotiate their pricing. We help them understand the contracts. And our services, on the most part, are 100% free. We get paid on the back end when someone moves into the community. We get paid a referral fee from that community. The only caveat to that is that we need to be the point of first contact. So if somebody's out there researching on their own and calling places and going to luncheons and doing all that, then they're already registered at those communities. And
this is very important to understand. If you are in the process of looking at different senior communities, don't do it until you've spoken with Bruce or someone who is in this industry who you otherwise respect. If you're not in Southwest Florida, I'm sure that they can look up. Do they just look for senior housing experts?
So there's a lot of different ways you can research, and obviously the internet is what the majority of people do. But you have to be very careful when you're doing internet research, because what happens, there are some companies that you register and you think you're getting free advice, and you register, and then they basically will own your contact information, and then they will sell that to third parties. So you're getting now phone calls from 30 different communities around the area, as well as calls from hearing aid companies and medical alert companies and cremation companies. And so you got to be very, very careful about doing online research. And I know that's what we all do when we're trying to research something, but you got to be very careful. So when you're trying to find a service like mine, having somebody who has boots on the ground, who has personal knowledge about all the different communities, that's extremely valuable. And so it's much better to go to a local resource who has this knowledge than trying to, do something on your own.
Okay. So if you're in Southwest Florida, Bruce Rosenblatt is the name that you want to connect with. And we'll put all your information in the show notes so that you can find Bruce. And if you're somewhere outside of Southwest Florida and you're looking for a consultant, the answer is there's no short answer, but be very careful, right? Do your homework.
And I would say you could still call me. Because
okay.
I've been in the industry for so long, and I've worked in a lot of different states. And so even if you're not in Southwest Florida, call me or shoot me an email, and I can help you, direct you to the right resource.
Awesome. And so, Bruce, I really appreciate your time today and sharing as much as you do and helping as many families as you do to settle in the communities that you are so familiar with down here in Southwest Florida. If there were one last thing that you would want to say and leave our listeners with, any last thoughts or words of advice for people who are in this place?
I would just say, have honest conversations with your parents. Sit down with them, have conversations with them. Join them, because they're afraid. They know they're getting older. They know things are changing in their lives. And so it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It could be a good thing. And so, go with them, visit with these different communities, help them through this process, understand what they can afford. And, in the long run, everybody's going to be really a lot happier, and they're going to have the peace of mind that they need, and you're going to have the peace of mind knowing that they're enjoying their life.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much. You've been listening to the Evolve to Win show. I'm here with Bruce Rosenblatt, and I appreciate so much your time.
My
we
pleasure.
will connect everyone with Bruce in the notes to the show. If you enjoyed this episode or if you have somebody who you think would really benefit from hearing the information that Bruce shared, please share this episode, and you can always subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app.